It's time that we talk about the kingdom of Majapahit, and more specifically, the Empire of Water. This is a six-part series, so consider subscribing to the channel if you want to stay up to date on all the commentary and discussions we have here on my channel. Link to the original videos will always be in the description. Without further ado, let's get into it.
A canoe pushes up on the sand, and men step onto the shore. These are the Austronesians, the greatest mariners in history. They and their ancestors, the Polynesians, will make the Pacific their domain, using the stars and wind to settle nearly every speck of land from the Philippines to Hawaii. But this land is special.
Isn't the premise of the Avatar movies, isn't it based off of this? Or am I crazy? I feel like it is.
Racked by volcanic eruptions and at the crux of vital trade winds, it's a place to found an empire.
Mhm.
This is the island of Java.
It's like what's crazy? It's like everything started at Java, like coding for computers, Java, like all these other things, and so it's just I just find it interesting that so many things are, I guess, named after Java. Um, in regardless of what industry it is, it's kind of crazy.
A couple quick things up top. Please give a warm extra history welcome to Ali, who's doing art for this series. Thanks, Ali. And second, as we finalized this episode, a series of powerful earthquakes struck the Indonesian island of Lombok. We've linked two fundraising efforts in the description. One for international aid organizations, and another for a local effort verified by GoFundMe. Any help you could give would be deeply appreciated. And now,
Which earthquakes were those? I mean, it's not really like a pressing question because obviously this is an older video, but let me know in the comments what the earthquakes were those, or earthquake. And if you guys get them pretty regularly. I know a lot of Southeast Asia gets flooding, but what other things do you guys get in regards to environmental issues?
now back to the show. At first glance, the kingdom of Majapahit doesn't seem like one of the great empires of history. Where other Southeast Asian kingdoms endured for centuries, Majapahit's golden age only lasted 100 years, from roughly 1293 to 1389.
I look, okay, I don't know if I'm gonna I don't like that premise. So here's the thing, it's like, yes, there's empires that have lasted like, 1,000 years or whatever. 100 years, yes, technically in the history of the world isn't very long, but to a human, to our lives, that's a long time. 100 years is a very long time. You can see a lot change in 100 years. So, um, I don't know. I understand the difference, but I just don't think it's worth saying that it was very, very fast. Because again, back then, I mean, I guess time moves slower. So those 100 years really felt even longer than that. So I don't know. I just think that we still got to, regardless of how long the empire lasted, you should always still consider the achievements in the time that they were able to accomplish, regardless of the empire.
While other kings left great temples and palaces, Majapahit left only the modest ruins of its capital. Its scribes left few written records.
You know what's crazy? We've been talking about this, and I want to look more into the written records of the Majapahit. Maybe in these videos we might get into specifically what they did, but I know this is kind of one of, I don't mention it because like I want us to do better, but it's because in the past, a lot of, regardless of the civilization, regardless of the country, regardless of the history, like so many different places just did not or keep good documentation. And if they did have good documentation, they didn't really take care of it. Now I understand like writings back then were hard to maintain, but like if you need it, if they were important things, you should just rewrite them, like, or rewrite them the same way, but just on new things, so you keep the document, right? So I just, it does bum me out because even if it's smaller little stories or recipes, for example, recipes for me are like one of the biggest things. The best way to prove a dish came from your country, your land, not even just country, your land, is these writings. And so it just sucks that a lot of these things weren't preserved, and it bums me out that I'm learning that it really wasn't with the Majapahit. But there was also other kingdoms and smaller, different, how would I say, like little smaller kingdoms on top of the on under the bigger kingdom, right? So like obviously it doesn't apply to every single one of those, but I really hope that we start seeing more of that um across the region.
But do you know who hasn't forgotten Majapahit? Indonesia. In fact, Majapahit was so successful, even right after its fall, the Muslim states that conquered and replaced it tried to claim lineage from this Hindu-Buddhist kingdom. And many in modern Indonesia
Well, that's not new. A lot of civilizations have had that happen.
look back on it as the historical example of why their country exists. Because Majapahit did something that no other native government did until the 20th century. It brought the Indonesian archipelago under one rule. And that was no mean feat. Because Indonesia has over 13,000 islands, many with unique cultures and languages. Its
Yeah.
largest, Sumatra,
And I think this is one of the craziest things that I say this repeatedly, but and I really mean it, that Indonesia by far has been it's by far the most complex, but also the most interesting because of how diverse the country is, even on like a local level, because there's so many different groups of people, so many different foods, different cultures, so many different languages, right? Even different styles of governance in within the country. So I think it's one of those. It's just it's a land of wisdom because you have so much to learn from.
is the size of Spain, and the smallest are barely rocks sticking out of the ocean. The distance the archipelago stretches is immense. From northern Sumatra to eastern Papua New Guinea is the same distance as between London and Istanbul. Yet Majapahit united them, though what form that unity took is still debated. What isn't in dispute, though, is that they changed what would become Indonesia, the world's fourth most populous nation, in ways that are still apparent today.
Like, think about that. Like, that's so crazy. Like, some of these other countries with a lot of people are just one giant landmass, right? So the fact that you're the fourth and you're just a bunch of islands speaks to the idea of like, oh, not only can we exist as a country as a bunch of islands, but also we can actually live here, right? We make islands habitable. And then I kind of talk about this in another video where I was like, you know, it's there's countries even now having issues trying to make islands habitable. Um like fully. Now obviously there's going to be like hiccups and stuff like that, but the fact that you're able to show the world that like yes, you can have a country that is made up of islands and you can actually live here and have tons of people here. Like it's not impossible. Um so I think that's really cool. But let me know in the comments, do you think the country is only going to get bigger in regards to people, or do you feel like you guys are finding like a good pace on how you guys are growing? Let me know in the comments.
So, how did they do it? Well, the keys to Majapahit's success actually lay in two kingdoms that preceded it, the kingdom of Srivijaya and the kingdom of Mataram. And both of these kingdoms won power by control of the water. First, we'll visit Srivijaya.
Okay? I feel like this is the plot of Avatar, the new Avatar movies. Because like who else would this? I don't know. This just feels like that.
Jaya, a kingdom that was crucial to the development of the region, but a kingdom that was also forgotten until about a century ago. In the early 20th century, academics pieced together stone inscriptions and Chinese written accounts to discover that a thriving maritime.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Sorry. You know, it's funny. We talked about this kind of in the other video. I didn't really talk. Okay, we talked about it, but I didn't really understand what I was saying or like what I was really hearing until it just clicked. Okay, so you guys also have other accounts, and I don't know why I didn't click the first time, but that's because you did so much trade. So writing and y'all's accounts of things are not just you guys. So you guys have a little bit of an advantage because you had so much trade and people actually documenting you, not just you documenting yourself. Whereas like other civilizations, it felt like they were the only ones that were able to document themselves because no one came across them. So yeah, so I guess I'll give a little grace on that because you guys did have other people coming to talk to you guys. And regardless of the kingdom, it's clear that trade was very important.
Kingdom existed in Sumatra from the 7th to the 14th centuries.
Dang.
Srivijayan rulers were lords of water, governing a coastal kingdom that controlled the trade routes through the Strait of Malacca. They launched fleets of merchant vessels that brought products of Indonesia: gold, camphor resin, rice, aromatic sandalwood, and spice from the eastern islands to the markets of China and India. It's because of Srivijaya that the Indonesian archipelago became the famous Spice Islands Europeans whispered about, a land of untold riches and exotic goods. In the days before
And the thing is, it's like I only like later in my life learned that spices are really hard um to mass produce, or at least maybe not nowadays because of technology. But at the time, it was like if you really wanted to bring spices to a lot of people, it's you can't really if you don't already have it, it's really hard to start growing it regardless of the spices and really start cultivating it. And then depending on your region, you can't. So it's like a lot of people don't really understand how far we came from trying to just get spices. Like the fact that I can go to a grocery store and get so many different spices and there's no thought to it. But like back then, it's like if I wanted a bunch of paprika, again, it's not like for like 10 people. Like if I wanted for a whole society, if I want paprika for a whole society, I have to actually go out there and get it. Like I have to go find it. First, I got to go find enough of it, and then I got to bring it here, and then I got to keep doing that. It's like, oh my gosh, maybe we need to find. Let's see if we can find a video. If you guys let me know in the comments, don't link the video, but name the video because if you link the video, YouTube will remove the comment. So we need to find like a video specifically on like the history of spices because it's crazy the amount of logistics people had to go through just to get freaking spices. That I mean I'm not an expert on that, but like I just through covering a lot of these videos, history and stuff like that, it's just like wow, it's a real pain in the butt just to get spices.
refrigeration, anything that could preserve meat, or at least make it palatable when it was spoiled, was
Yes.
worth its weight in gold.
Yes.
And these islands held the world's only source of that most rare and mysterious spice, a thing with medicinal, even hallucinogenic properties. A single nut that has caused more spilling of blood than any other spice in history: nutmeg.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You guys talked about this. It's funny that it's full circle. So you guys really are the nutmeg kings.
People would kill for nutmeg. In the later colonial period, the Dutch will torture, murder, and enslave to acquire it, and Srivijaya controlled all access to it. But trade had long been a part of life in the archipelago. 2,500 years before Srivijaya was even founded, sailors were plying the waters around the island, following the trade winds that run south or north depending on the season.
Dang, y'all really didn't play around with trade. Y'all were like, let's get to it. We got all this water. We got to get to it. You know how many civilizations just had islands or had really good coastlines and tradeways, but just didn't do anything with it? That's crazy. You guys are, hey, I got to give y'all props. Okay, so like, obviously I'm learning, but like, I got to give y'all some props on this. I didn't realize y'all were really that masters of trade that y'all are like, as soon as we can touch water, let's get it going. We're not playing around.
Taking products to mainland Asia and bringing back influences such as Hinduism and Buddhism. Actually, by the time Srivijaya was kicking around, it wasn't unusual for Indonesian kings to have an Indian Brahmin or two as advisors.
Okay, so here's where, you know what? I'm going to wait a little bit. I'll ask this question, but I'm going to wait.
Or a group of Buddhist monks wandering their kingdom. Rather than running in competition, these religions fused, with Buddha joining the Hindu pantheon to create what's known as Hindu-Buddhism.
Which, by the way, this is, at least in my opinion, this was really hard to do back then. Whereas like nowadays, you see so many offshoots and different branches of different religions, even regardless of religion. But back then, it felt like it was really hard to find common ground between religions. So that's actually kind of crazy. That's actually really cool. Now, obviously, I don't know the context of how it became that way. Like, obviously, there's sometimes infighting and stuff like that. But regardless, the fact that you were able to blend religions and allow it to come together is actually really impressive. It means that there's a lot of like it's a sign of it of intelligence and like maturity of being able to talk to one another. You know, like let's explore these ideas. Let's get it together. Let's see what we can. Let's explore this more because again, we didn't have the internet. Nobody had the internet. Nobody had all these textbooks and books and access to all the writing. So like you had to really go through the journey to discover.
But unlike earlier trading states, Srivijaya had coordinated merchant fleets. They would go north, stay for a season absorbing foreign influences, then return with cargoes of precious objects and travelers on commercial or religious missions.
And knowledge and the knowledge of what they think. This is kind of like, gosh, this is what frustrates me. It's like, let's say your country or your history goes through different phases of like cultures, religions, whatever. I am of the belief that it's okay. Like, let's say you're a Muslim country, but you had like uh, a Buddhist background, right? I think it's important to keep those Buddhist temples and stuff because it allows you to, like, let's say the population isn't Buddhist at all, but you still have those temples. What I would say is like those are great opportunities to teach your young and your children about what other countries might see and what other countries experience, what other country cultures are, so that they can then, when they go explore the world, they're very educated. They're very open minded to how the world works because there's this thing called culture shock where it's like you go somewhere and you just shocked by how different it is having access to such different architecture. I guess, oh my gosh, it's like every video I'm talking about architecture because it's so architecture is so important because it allows you a glimpse into somewhere far away in a very real physical way that no other like videos can't or like, your phone can't do. And I think that's one of the things we're like are really liking Indonesia for that because you have so much still there, still physically on the land that you can go experience and learn from other cultures, other histories. Be like, oh, maybe I'm going to go visit this country. I have a temple here that's very similar to the ones over there. Let me come here and like learn the history here. So then when I go to that country, I am very informed and I can appreciate it more. Or it's like it's just it's a really holistic way of approaching life. I know it's a whole separate rant. I always rant about architecture. I'm sorry. I need to stop.
As a result, Srivijaya's
I'm not going to stop about ranting about architecture. Architecture is such a big deal, and I wish the world would appreciate it more.
coastal settlements became diverse, cosmopolitan places, with communities of Chinese, Malays, indigenous tribes, and others from Southeast Asia. But Srivijaya's real innovation was how it whipped the pirates and sea nomads along its coast into a merchant navy that locked down the sea lanes, controlling the spice trade.
And this is one of the things where, like, I'm glad that they cover this because I was really confused. Because when you look at he kind of, I mean, he obviously talked about how, like, in the past or other countries and other civilizations, I keep saying countries, civilizations, what they would do is they would send traders just kind of like they'll either have private trading companies and they'll just let them deal with all the problems that come with trading, or they would send like one or two, not really, there was no real coordination on a large scale to do it. And that's when all these pirates start coming in because it's like, oh, there's just two boats over there. We have four. We can rob them. Like it's whereas like what we're seeing here, it's like, oh, let's send a fleet, a group of boats so that nothing happens to them. You would think crazy. That's a good idea, but it's a lot of these civilizations just straight up didn't do it. And that's why we had such crazy pirate situations. So many pirates back then. So it's like it's really cool to see you guys were like ahead of the game and understanding trade. Like it's just safer to be a fleet. And also you can carry more back at the same time. Like you save time.
Srivijaya didn't directly rule the spice-producing islands in the east. In fact, it didn't even care who governed the interior of its home island of Sumatra. As far as we can tell, they didn't even produce their own food. They extracted rice tributes from other islands that needed access to the Strait of Malacca, because spice and spice trading was that important.
Dang, what? I don't know. I don't know if I like that. But I mean, it worked, but that's crazy. How okay? How accurate is this? Were they really that reliant on food, actual self, like a food for self, like for your own people, as tributes? Like, is it really that big that they, or was it okay? Or was it like, oh, maybe like 80% of the food that they ate were local, but then like 20% was tributes? That's still a big chunk of food. 20% is still a lot, but that just seems wild. I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna be a little skeptical on this. I'm gonna wait for you guys to let me know in the comments how accurate that is because that seems kind of crazy to me. I'm not saying that it's wrong or right. I just think that's kind of out there to just let everyone else feed you. Because like, what happens if they don't? Now you're stuck with no food. So I don't know. I'm a little skeptical.
The spice expanded tastiness. The spice was vital for preserving meat. The spice must flow. So,
Dune.
Srivijaya controlled the Spice Islands by becoming lords of water. But southeast of Sumatra, on the neighboring island of Java, was the kingdom of Mataram. And they too were lords of water. Fresh water. Mataram served as Srivijaya's upland ally, though whether they were full partners or vassals is undetermined, and probably varied. At times, they fought. While the rulers of Mataram controlled the ports.
Okay, so this is where I'm gonna ask. Obviously, everything's like it just depends. You know whose side is talking about it. But when they fight, was it actually the empires and the kingdoms fighting, or was it like certain families and certain houses within those kingdoms fighting each other? Right? Because I give an example of like some of the earlier medieval kingdoms. Right? Uh, People would like to say, "Oh, these two kingdoms fought," but it's really was like, two big houses from two different, like two big houses from two bigger kingdoms that were fighting, but there was only really them two. Does that make sense? Like it wasn't actually the two kingdoms. So, you know, not saying that things are always over exaggerated, but sometimes there's been cases where it's like been overplayed and it's like, no, it was really just these two houses fighting. They just happen to be from two different sides, or two different groups, like, but it really wasn't the whole people. Let me know in the comments if that was the case. I just feel like sometimes, at least learning as I'm reading for other things that even videos that I don't even make, I'm just finding that ends up being the case. It's like it wasn't really that crazy.
On Java. Their power center lay in the terraced rice fields on the volcanic slopes. In fact, one of the kingdom's most prominent dynasties literally ruled under the name Lord of the Mountain.
That's a cool name. I'll be honest. If I could have Lord of the Mountain, I would. I don't know why. Hey, that's a cool name.
Where Srivijaya was dynamic and open to outside influences, Mataram was conservative and traditionalist, changing slowly and deliberately. Its strength lay in agriculture and controlling the irrigation systems that fed its enormous rice terraces.
Well, that makes sense. Well, like if if you want to be good at trade, you have to be more open-minded. You have to be more like open to new ideas. Like, that's just how it is. But if your whole civilization is built on agriculture, you're focused on what's working right now because that's what agriculture is. Like you need it to work, you need it to deliver because or else you don't have food, right? Like it's a very different mindset. So I'm just saying, like both can be good. Does that make sense?
Centuries before, the Javanese had started using wet rice cultivation to boost their agricultural productivity. While the island's sacred volcanoes sometimes made life hazardous, they also gave Java some of the most fertile soil in the Pacific,
Dang.
meaning the kingdom of Mataram could produce huge quantities of rice to support a large population and export via trade. But rice terraces require irrigation, which is how the first Javanese government started. Village leaders would control the irrigation systems, with their power radiating out to wherever the water went. Gradually, these irrigation systems solidified into small kingdoms, which eventually coalesced under the kings of Mataram, lords of the mountain, and managers of rice fields.
That's crazy. That's actually kind of crazy. That's actually kind of cool. Um, I gotta learn about these guys. That just because of the name and how much they develop their civilization. All right, like can someone let me know? Like maybe is there like a video on these guys, or I'll look into them. But these guys sound really cool. I mean, everyone sounds awesome, but this guy, Lord of the Mountain.
While Srivijaya controlled the shipping lanes, Mataram had something just as crucial: a large workforce that it used to plant, harvest, and maintain the irrigation networks.
Well, the thing is also, if you have more food, you're gonna have more people. That's just how it is.
And they could mobilize that manpower for other projects, like conquest or temple construction. The first temples on Java appeared in the 7th century on the upland plateaus,
Are they the ones? Okay, before we get into this video, you know what? I'm gonna wait on this question.
with local kingdoms erecting beautiful, if modest, Hindu temples in the Indian style. But the kings of
Is that why you guys were able to build so many temples and so fast? Or like so many and then like how big they are, and was it because of this? Because of you guys? I wonder. Because that would make a lot of sense.
Mataram had something much grander in mind, something that would eclipse these little Hindu structures. For unusually, the most prominent Mataram dynasty was Buddhist, and they wanted to build a monument that would endure forever. It took generations, but they did it. Borobudur remains, to this
I want to visit this. I was just about to ask this.
day, the largest Buddhist structure on the planet. So big, it looks like a stone mountain. This hulking monument is actually a series of platforms, a mandala in stone, where each level features bas-relief carvings on increasingly sacred topics. Pilgrims would travel upward, walking around the outside of each level while meditating on the 2,600 carved panels, seeing
Jeez.
tales of their ordinary world, stories of Buddhist saints, previous incarnations of the Buddha, scenes from Buddha's life, and finally a summit of bell-shaped stupas representing the celestial realm.
And you know what? They did not waste time building it. That's the thing too. It's like you see all these like civilizations like it got started so late building anything of like huge grandeur, right? Not obviously, like I'm not saying every civilization had to, but I do think that like it's really cool to leave something behind for future generations to know that you're there, that where you came from. Like I see the I in like even if it's not my culture and not my history or not even my religion or anything like that, like I can appreciate the idea of humans, we as people on this planet, leaving something and a story to tell behind. And so it's encouraging to see civilizations be like, you know what, we're gonna get started right now. We're gonna adopt the mentality to do this, regardless of where we are. We're just gonna do it as soon as we can, rather than waiting. Like, that's why you have cathedrals, you have temples, you have all these different things, and it's just I wish there was more of it.
Srivijaya couldn't build anything like Borobudur. Though, in fairness, Mataram might not have really been able to do it either, because it may have cost them their kingdom.
What? Hey, I did. Hey, well,
Soon after its completion, this Buddhist dynasty abandoned their lands, perhaps due to revolts over the burden of temple construction, perhaps due to an eruption of their sacred mountain, perhaps both. But the dynasty set a new bar for what a central Javanese kingdom could do.
but that's the thing is like again, it might have been brutal, but you left. That's kind of what happens when you make temples and giant things of grandeur back then. Like there was no other way. So, I don't know the context, and I'm not gonna like apologize for like, oh, you should do. It was okay to do it. All I'm saying is I'm glad that there's temples in this world, cathedrals or whatever that's left behind for us to learn.
And while their successor dynasty moved the capital to the east, one of their first actions was to one-up their Buddhist predecessors by building a similarly grand Hindu monument, the Temple of Prambanan.
Okay, we've heard about this one.
The stage
See, that's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't matter. Everyone, once you really get the idea of being able to leave something behind, it's like we got to keep doing this because it only enriches the future. And I understand, like obviously context, like oh workforce, blah 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 blah. Yes, but that's just how back then things were done. That's why we changed a lot of that today. Like that's why we don't do a lot of the crazy manpower things uh that we do nowadays for the most part. In some countries you do, sometimes countries you don't. But for the most part it's widely accepted like, you know, it's a little bit different.
Was set. Whatever kingdom could fuse these two elements, the maritime trading empire of Srivijaya with the raw inland power of Mataram, would become the lords of the archipelago, an empire of water. That kingdom
The end to Empire Water and the mountain.
was Majapahit.
Am I just want to throw that in there. Remember, the Empire Water and the mountain. Like that. Hey, this is really cool. We're gonna continue this series. I know I know I'm gonna have more questions, but I'm also gonna, get some answers. It seems like this videos seem to me pretty good, well informed. Let me know in the comments. Do you agree that this was really well? Is there any things that they left out context wise? Is there points that they left out? If you made it to this video, the end of the video, I actually want to point something out that some of you all pointed out in the last video was when we were talking about the Mongols and Indonesia, or the kingdoms of Indonesia. One of the reasons why the Mongols were very hesitant after getting betrayed to then go back and try to fight them was because you guys had gunpowder. But not only did you have it, you knew how to use it. You had cannons, you had some of the earlier forms of muskets because you had taken that and you've learned that from trading with the Mongols. So some of y'all gave the added context that like it was even more of a risk to do it after getting betrayed because they knew that you guys had that. So it's just like, well, it's just not worth it. Uh, anyway, I'm adding this little bit of context, and it's just an example of why I love reading y'all's comments and why I learn so much from you guys. Because sometimes some of these videos just leave out little bits and pieces that actually make a huge difference, like the idea of gunpowder. Anyway, love you guys. Check out the next one. Be safe out there. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye. This video is brought to you, actually, by viewers like you. Thank you so much for subscribing and being part of my journey and allowing me to be a part of yours. Let's create new memories this 2025 on our road to 1 million subscribers. And with all that jazz out of the way, I just want to say thank you so much. I love y'all and enjoy the video.